Design and marketing, while they go hand in hand, they also fight with each other a lot. Because what's good design is always not good. Much to the sadness of multiple members of my family, I dropped my business course to pick art. Hi, I'm Ananya. I'm the founder of 9133 Design Studio. We work with tiny, small, medium, large businesses to craft their visual identity, to help them find their voice.
I think you've redeemed your family's thing where they were disappointed that you dropped the business. I think you picked it up in a more practical sense.
At that point, I really regretted dropping the business. I wish I hadn't.
7 ways a dips brand makes its branding better, different, consistent.
So I think the first thing was,
What's the influence of, current culture, stereotypes, however you want to look at it?
very high.
Do you think marketing is a con?
I don't think marketing is necessarily a con. Hi, I'm Ananya. I'm the founder of 9133 Design Studio. We are a small team design studio with roots in Calcutta, but based all across the country. So while I live in Cal and my team, we have a studio space in Cal, the team is kind of scattered all across the country. We have teammates in Pune, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Ahmedabad. So it's a little bit all over the place. We are a branding studio, essentially. By that, it means that we work with tiny, small, medium, large businesses to craft their visual identity, to help them find their voice in a sea of multiple competitors, to kind of create a better understanding of why they are doing what they are doing. So our role primarily is to come in and help them visualize who they can be, who they want to be, even if they have not been able to achieve that yet, and then help them create the best content, logo, design, all of these things to support that vision, essentially, and, create something that can stand out in what is probably the most crowded time in design in India right now, because everyone is starting a new brand or is creating a new product. So there's lots happening. So yeah, it's a very interesting space. To answer the question, what is wrong with this world? I could do a whole other podcast. I'm not sure that this is the time that I should talk about that because it might go longer than we have time for. But I think design has a very unique place, and it's becoming even more important in the lives of everyone today, which I'm very glad and grateful for. People are seeing the value that design brings to many different things, right? Whether it is the chair you're sitting on, or the equipment you're recording with, or the company that you're trying to build. Everything has some aspect of design in it, and we are able to creatively problem solve a lot for people, and that's the process I really enjoy. Understanding the pain points a client comes with, and then trying to solve and create solutions for it.
We'll get to the whole design part by parsing our logo and our design and our videos if you've seen any, and we'll do like a step-by-step go through later in the episode. But why not start with where you come from and how do you get here?
Just before that, I think another thing I want to mention, we have an indirect connection to Ananya. We've got one of our clients on board this podcast. We had Surya and Upasna from Vati, and we did an episode with them. That's live, so please go and check that out if you haven't.
Yeah, Surya sent it to me actually. Just last week he was in Calcutta, so he sent me the video. But he's like, it's 2 hours long. I don't have the patience to listen to it. Do you? And I was like, okay, challenge accepted. I will listen to some part of it at least. So yeah, I did hear part of it. I didn't hear the whole thing though, to be very honest.
It was one of our more challenging episodes because the internet connections. So while editing it, a lot of the parts we were like, hey, this is a first for us. We're hearing this for the first time.
No, so well, Surya is a great segue into how I got here. I think how I got introduced to this world, how I started out is, I guess, a very typical tale, yet a long story. I was always the kid who was good at drawing. The kid that everyone went to and said, please make something for me, draw my birthday card, make this. So I was always that kid. I always knew I liked drawing. And that kind of stuck with me through life, whether it was through classes, extracurriculars. My mom is an excellent painter, so she always encouraged it, made sure that we had lots of creative classes going on with ourselves constantly. And I was in boarding school in grade 11 and 12, where I went to do the IB in Bangalore. And that was the first time I ever had the option of taking art as a subject. And much to the sadness of multiple members of my family, I dropped my business course to pick art instead. And yeah, there was no looking back from there. I don't think I knew what I wanted to do with art when I was in college. I think kids today are so sorted. They have all of these ideas of like what they're going to do with their lives with design. I think when I chose to go to design school, it was still fairly new. There weren't that many people from India going to design school. So it was a very complicated space. To explain to my parents that this is what I was doing was a challenge. And I went to RISD to do product design. So I did industrial design as my undergrad, actually. So that was another interesting conversation. Nobody really understood what industrial design means, because design in India meant कपड़े बनाते हो या घर बनाते हो. Like उसके बीच में और क्या बना सकते हो, right? So whenever I had this conversation about industrial design or what I was doing, it was just eye-opening for a lot of people. The only person who was the proudest of me was my grandfather, because by profession he makes trains. So he was just so happy that I was studying industrial design, because he's like, you're going to come back and you're going to design India's trains now. And I feel really bad that I didn't do that sometimes, because I really wanted him to feel that joy and pride that he truly believed in me for. But yeah. So I think the reason I found graphic design or branding as the space that I've been working in was a little bit of, I knew I could build a business out of it, and I needed to do that with whatever I created or designed. And second, I found it because through the series of places I worked in after graduating, I ended up working in a lot of branding studios as the 3D designer, as the industrial designer, as the product designer, along with a group of graphic designers. So I was always the one who was actualizing a lot of their ideas. And I realized that there was a slight gap in what I could create and what they were creating. But I understood what they were creating really well. And there was an opportunity for me to be able to meld both of those and create something unique for myself. So yeah, I went and learned branding a little bit better, understood technically what I felt was unsound. And I interned in New York for a bit in some ad agencies where I did really boring work, but it was a great learning experience. And then in 2017 beginning, I'd already been working there for a bit, but it was still really boring work. I was getting a lot of freelance work from friends and family back in India who wanted stuff done, so I figured that this was a good time to maybe come back and start something of my own. And that's how 9133 was born. I guess the Maru in me always knew that I had to start my own business and there was no other way to do this. So that was always the eventual dream that, it has to be your own thing. And I think that's the part of this that I really enjoy. I don't physically design as much anymore. Now my role is much more strategy, managing designers, teaching, training, mentoring, and growing the team. But when I started out, I was a freelancer moonlighting under a studio name, and just because I knew that was decent business. But I didn't know the burr of business when I started. So that has been a cruel reality check over the last 10 years.
I think you've redeemed your family's thing where they were disappointed that you dropped the business. I think you picked it up in a more practical sense.
Honestly, that point, I really regretted dropping the business. I wish I hadn't, because I would have known a lot more about balancing like balance sheets had I taken accounts for even 1 year of my life, instead of trying to figure it out all on the go. So at some point, I understand the pain my family went through, because the practicality aspects were not fun.
Three Idiots is an ongoing discussion on our podcast. I feel like it pops into almost every one of our episodes. And in Three Idiots, there's a scene where Rancho, the lead protagonist, goes to his friend's house, and there are like animal photos all over the wall. And he tells his parents, he clicks such good photos. Why do you want to make him into an engineer, right? So you had a similar kind of thing where you're like, I can draw. Why do you want me to be in this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I ever thought about how business plays a role in a business, if you know what I mean. For me, it was very much like, I know design, I'm good at it. I think I can manage people and grow this into something. Let's do it. Uh, Startup cost is low, so I can afford it. Uh, so let's do it. But I never really thought about the business aspect of the business. Like, that's something that's been an ongoing learning through the years. And it's been pretty interesting. I think I'm getting better at it. Uh, Although I'm still challenged by multiple really simple situations that should not be as challenging, I feel.
So this leads into one of our very early episodes where we were, again, I am very similar to you in that sense. I did computer science, which was, again, Greek and Latin to my family. They were like, what are you doing? Why are you not doing something in business? And like, are you sure you want to do this? Because this is all completely new to us. And then I came back to India and I was like, okay, fine, let's learn what finance is, what business is. And I was in your boat, exactly. And then when Akhil and I wanted to start out, when we wanted to do a couple of things together, we read this book called The E-Myth Revisited, which essentially talks about exactly the problem that you're talking about, that you didn't understand the value of business in a business. So it talks about that, and it goes about, as you're saying with your journey, it talks about solving that. So it's funny to see a lot of these books that you read and so many things that you just end up reading in passing or hearing in passing actually come, and you see real life scenarios with this happening. So you realize that there might actually be some value somewhere in books.
Oh, definitely. No, I love to read. I read a lot. Lot of fiction, lot of non-fiction. I don't read as much as I could before. I feel like my attention span has severely been affected by television, which I'm kind of really sad about. But yeah, I still really enjoy reading.
So how does industrial design lead you to a business? You start designing stuff. You think people need a logo, people need a website, people need what exactly is industry design? Let's break it down.
So industrial design is not branding. Industrial design actually is designing product. So like the chair I'm sitting on, a desk that you're sitting on, headphones. It can be anything like light fixtures, tableware. Like we had studios that ranged from designing the moon buggy for NASA to designing packaging for Dove to designing the most ergonomic chair. So honestly, industrial design is three-dimensional design. It's about designing product more than designing graphically. Graphic design is what includes branding, visual, storytelling, and all of those pieces. So I actually studied the three-dimensional aspect of design in my undergrad. While I always selected things that kind of overlapped in both spaces. Like I ended up doing the studio with Dove, so I learned about a lot about packaging, about creating, ergonomic bottle shapes. Like why the shampoo bottle created the way it is, the structure of it, because it's easy to squeeze at a certain viscosity of liquid. Things like that. So why is a square bottle not a good idea? Why do you need a bottle with round edges? How is design considered feminine or masculine in these spaces? What can you do to add those elements to attract customers to buy the right product for themselves? So simple things like that that lead into like the psychology of a consumer, but also just help in creating beautiful yet very usable products. Uh, and I think that's a baseline value system that I've taken into design even at 9133. While the product we are designing is not the same, we are not making physical 3D objects at the moment. It is a pipeline dream that I someday hope to be able to get back to. Uh, we are currently using that same design thinking to create brand identities and stories for people. People often think of branding as just the logo of what someone does, but a brand is a lot more than that. It's how it looks, how it speaks, uh, what it's communicating to its consumer, how it's communicating that to its consumer. Um, in the sea of, like, say, 100 brands for chips, why is Lay's the most popular one? What did they do right that a lot of the other ones have not been able to do? Is it just because they were the oldest? Or is there something about their design, their taste and flavor profile that's actually working better for their audiences versus all of the new age chips brands that are coming through? So there are all of these aspects that kind of get translated into what we're doing. So, like, for example, right now we are rebranding a publishing company, which is a very exciting project because books are amazing and you get to create an entire range of something that goes into print. Um, but studying publishing companies, we've also been trying to understand, like, their scope of work to us was, please rebrand us and then create all our book covers. So in the process of creating book covers, we ended up doing a lot of research. Also because these book covers are not necessarily targeted to us. We are not the consumers of these books. These are all study books, like guides for students, grade 9, grade 10. Correct. Gen Z, Max, Gen Alpha, whatever gen they are now, I'm not even sure. Sorry for sounding like an old person, but
Once again, in the same boat.
you cannot say this, Mishroth. Please, lies.
But I have no clue.
That is called being unaware, not being old.
I think it's about not being bothered enough to care and just whatever it is, let it be.
No. So I was just saying that designing these book covers, we realize that there's a reason publishers don't make every book look the same. It's not because no one ever thought of this before, right? I'm pretty sure there are plenty of people who have the means and the wills to go to a designer and say, make all our book covers standard. But they don't do that because kids want the variety. They're not attracted to the same thing over and over again. While you need to create brand retention in the mind of the child or the consumer, where they understand that if they buy one book from this brand and it's really good for them, they can buy all of these others because they look similar. They can't look identically alike. There needs to be difference. There needs to be color. There needs to be fun for them to be attracted to them. And also in the world of Amazon today, kids are not really going into bookstores anymore. And kids are definitely not listening to their parents when it comes to which book they should use because they feel like their parents are super dated. So it was very interesting. So each project teaches us something extremely different and extremely new into consumer psychology, into how to actually create a solution for something that will work for the market.
Let's take the book example. Now, you did research on the books, right? You did plenty of research. Let's have 7 ways how you improved the book covers from what they were before.
Improve is one thing. I think it was just making more consistent. So the brand that came to us had never actually gone through design as a process. It's a very old publishing company. They have been publishing the same thing for years on end. They'd kind of just taken whatever they had and done the best that they had with it. And they kept going because their books were selling really well because of the content within it. Now they wanted the exterior to match the interior. So our job was to create consistency as the most important part, while yet keeping it grounded in logic and not just aesthetic. So I'm unfortunately not in a position to be able to share the solutions at this point because the brand hasn't launched yet. But the thing is that,
You want to take a different example?
let's talk about one of our recent projects. We did a brand for sauces and dips. So this was a brand out of Ahmedabad.
7 ways a dips brand makes its branding more better, different, consistent.
Okay, so I think the first thing was to align the strategy for the brand. Like, what is the brand doing that nobody else is? Because many people make products. So their USP was that they tried to bring unconventional ingredients into their products. So, for example, they have a bhut chulakya salsa. They have a gunpowder mayonnaise. They have a what like sesame seed and sarso ka tomato relish chutney. They took the Gujarati chili garlic dip and they made it a really yummy emulsified dip. They took pudina chutney and they made it another dip. So they've taken like things that are intrinsic to India in some format and combined it with international ideas and how people eat today and created a whole range of products. The ideology that we came up with for them or the story that we built for them was that food is fun. You can take one product and you can eat it with 100 different things. Like today, I can eat gunpowder mayonnaise with my dosa if I so desire, or I can put it on a sandwich, or I can eat it with my omelette, right? Like there's no rules for food anymore. It's just based on how you want to eat it. So we decided to take that idea of food is fun and food is games and translate that into their entire packaging. So we created games for all of their product labels. So each product got a game as its brand, and then all of the content was written keeping that game and those puns in mind. So we played with food puns, we played with game puns, and we made taglines for each product, or we wrote one-liners per product so that people understand what they're getting. Like snakes and ladders became snacks and ladders.
That must be the Gujarati one.
Correct. Like tagline for Pesto was "This is nuts." Uh, so it was just really simple things, but things that people react to well. And also, one of the directives to us was that the jars should be something that people can buy from the grocery store and put on their dining table when they have a party. Uh, so we carried through that language or that look in whatever we did. Yeah. So I don't know if I answered 7 ways in which I made this better or 7 ways in which this worked better. But here's a slightly long form answer for you. If you want me to break it down into points, I can.
So, Ananya, since we were speaking about taglines and since you mentioned snakes and ladders became snacks and ladders, how much do stereotypes or like pop culture, how much does that play into this? What is because you earlier even mentioned masculine and feminine design. So, what's the influence of, current culture, stereotypes, however you want to look at it?
Very high, honestly, because everything is topical, right? And today, I think everything has that Gen Z is such a big target audience, millennials and Gen Z, for every product that is currently being launched, especially in the FMCG space, because they have ended up being the consumers with the maximum disposable income. Gen Z is not earning to save; they are earning to spend, and that completely changes the outlook of brands. So brands are now creating product that Gen Z will buy. And to speak to Gen Z, you have to speak like Gen Z, right? If you are preaching to them or you are giving them unnecessary information, they are not necessarily interested in that product. You have to find a very good balance of not being preachy yet being informational. Because I also don't think that our generations, the millennials, Gen Zs, whatever you want to call that age group of people, um, are buying into things just because of marketing. They're also doing their research or they are looking for recommendations. They're making sure that they are validating. So you can't just say that, oh, this is the healthiest brand in the world and expect that they'll take it at face value. You have to substantiate the claim that you're making on packaging now or on product or on any kind of design. So pop culture is a very big way of people, creating that relatability. And I think that's also such a big reason that you see the Instagram culture so drastically creating content on anything big that happens in the world today. Like whether it was Chandrayaan 3 on the moon or anything. Like now, no matter what the brand is, they will make one post on this because what if that's the post that goes viral and gets their brand that recognition that they need, right? So topical content is actually one of the biggest marketing tools today. While I don't agree with the logic that every brand needs to issue Happy Independence Day and Happy Raksha Bandhan and all of those things, I really feel like they are really not adding value to anything. It's too difficult for people to pull away from it because every opportunity not taken is a missed opportunity from a marketing aspect. Which is why design and marketing, while they go hand in hand, they also fight with each other a lot. Because what's good design is always not good marketing.
I want to go deeper into this marketing discussion. So the innate thought about marketing is that somebody's trying to con you. It feels like marketing is so driven. This person will react to this color. Females react to this. Men react to this. If you are an Indian, you'll react to, I'll put a moon on my Maggie packet and be like, this Maggie will take you like Chandrayaan took the whatever. Why in so much information is it becoming so difficult to actually do your research? It's becoming more and more intricately difficult to actually realize what's good for me, what's bad for me. There's so much stuff. Do you think marketing is a con, or do you think there are better ways to think about it?
I don't think marketing is necessarily a con. A lot of people, yes. See, I think there are lots of pieces at play here. One, our marketing rules or like safety rules on food packaging is not that strict. You can make any claim on packaging without having to substantiate it very clearly. While there are some guidelines you need to follow, any brand can say no artificial flavor, no this, no, or okay, probably not vegan, but like any brand can make any claim without fully substantiating it at the back of pack. It's becoming stricter, but it's not there yet. And that leads to a lot of greenwashing, health washing, whatever you want to call it, where people are saying almost no sugar or this much percentage less sugar. But less sugar than what, right? If you had 200% sugar and you made it 10% lesser, that's still 190% of sugar. So, of course, marketing is creating intelligent content so that someone buys into your product the first time. But I don't think marketing as it used to be in the 90s or the early 2000s works anymore. And I'm pretty sure you can see that as a switch with how new brands and even old brands are trying to reposition themselves, talk about woke topics, be more aware of gender fluidity and gender neutrality and, what works for who. Like today, feminine and masculine design probably don't hold as much value as what we were taught in college, because gender neutrality has become a really big thing that we have to be aware of. And as designers, it is our responsibility to be aware of what is happening globally, even if we are designing for just our country. Because there's plenty of the categories that we end up designing for are still for the 2% of India that is educated, that is reading a lot, that has left the country to study, or even if they've studied in the country in colleges, they are very aware globally. The internet is making the world a smaller place. So I don't think people fall for marketing traps necessarily anymore. They fall for clever content. They appreciate clever content. They are taken by it. They are amused by it. They will share it. And if they reflect the values that the brand is looking to reflect, even if it is a cheap marketing stunt, they'll most likely support the brand because they understand at the end of the day that economics matter. Right? So I think it's about how well you craft that directive for yourself as a brand and how smartly you're talking to your consumer. You have to make them buy into your story to begin with. They need to feel that your cause is their cause. And once you have them, they will do whatever it takes to support you. Well, it's also a very loyal bunch of people. Like you said, there's so much competition. Once you find something that really works for you, you don't really want to let it go just for another substitute. So, like, for example, I think a few brands in India that are doing a fab job right now. Sabko Coffee, if you guys have heard of. They're a Bombay-based coffee brand. They are called Sabko because it's from the subcontinent and it is for everyone. So, excellent naming. They source local coffee from different parts of India. And they started out as just a coffee brand, but now they have a chocolate brand, they have cafes, they've created an entire ecosystem, and they're doing a really good job at communicating what they need to. So even if their coffee is expensive, it is something that people are willing to spend the extra money on to buy and to drink and to consume. Um, their quality of product is good. Even if they make one blend which is not as good, and see, every blend can't be for everybody, uh, people are quite forgiving because they understand the brand as a whole. They have bought into the story. Think about all of the alcohol brands that India has recently, the new gins. So many of them have extremely loyalist followers. People choose those over most international gins today. Price points are one thing, but also because they just believe in the brand that the company has built for themselves. Uh, so I feel like marketing, yes, is a hoax to a certain extent because they have to hook you, but they have to do it in a way that is considered today. I don't think that just running a promotion on something will get people to buy it. Of course, if you sell things for extreme cheap, I think human nature will always trump everything, and you will get more consumers the minute you make your price lower.
So I definitely agree with what you're saying, because I think a lot of people now are looking for things that make them like laugh. I think if there's a smart hook to something, or there's a smart joke, even if you can very clearly see that yes, this is not a marketing gimmick, this is not something that the brand actually does, but the fact that it's made you chuckle is something that is going to make you, okay, that I should share this, or I should check this out further. I should, like, it's going to grab that extra 2 seconds of interest from people.
You want to feel connected, that's all. Like, you want a moment of connection with the brand. Whether, like if you think of Paperboat, what they did was they played with nostalgia as the connection. I don't know if you guys know the brand Paperboat, but they make these juice packs and snack packs and stuff. And they used the idea of when you were a child and you took train journeys from one place to the other, and you had these like super sugary juices, and you just had time to do whatever you wanted to, and there were no rules and there was no like restriction. And they took that idea and they captured it so beautifully into their packaging that for the longest time, if Paperboat was available, people didn't want any other drink. So it's just capturing human emotion or want in that kind of regard, right? Like taking something that everyone understands, everyone relates to, and feel some sort of connection or desire to explore. It either has to be aspirational or it has to be connective.
Another thing today, I think the identity that a brand builds, and as you speak about consistency. So funnily enough, today morning, I was in the car with my grandfather and he played some WhatsApp forward and it had the Raymond music playing. Not something that I saw, and once he stopped that, I was like, were you watching a Raymond ad? And it was something that Raymond had done for Teachers' Day. And that music, because you've heard it and it's been the same for the past, 15, 20 years, the moment you hear it, that's that association immediately. And so I think the consistency bit that you were talking about also comes into play a lot, because you end up, as you said, brands look for a point of association. Then those things like the music, like, the Airtel tune or the Nokia tune from all the way back, I think, which of the one was the one, I think Airtel was it, which A.R. Rahman had composed. Those things those are things that just stick with you. And, no matter who will use it, wherever they will use it, you end up identifying it to the thing that you originally heard it with, or the first association that you make with it.
The human emotion is a very complex subject. Like when you talk about even Isaac Newton, he lost a lot of money in the stock market. And he used to say, I can understand the movement of the stars and the galaxies, but I cannot understand how the human brain works. So we are in a constant state of flux as to what we feel about how we feel about different things. You being in marketing have the most prime access to like the best seats in the house to realize how fast everything is changing, right? If I'm a small business, how do I keep up with that change? How do I get to know that this is what is changing and I need to change henceforth? I get the consistency bit, but what about the rest of it? How do I actually get people to click because I'm a podcast, to buy because I'm a retail brand, to see me if I'm just an ad on a board, right? How do I continuously change?
No one said design was a well-paying job. This is the biggest lie. So understanding human emotion doesn't get you anything. And understanding human emotion is not real. You are just trying to figure it out. But it's about building connection, right? And as a small brand, in terms of what uh, you can do to garner connection is to remain aware. I think being blinded by what you do and not looking outside to check what's happening in the rest of the world is the biggest mistake you can make as a small brand, regardless of what your product or service is. You have to constantly be aware of what's going on in the world and then try to speak to that. Which brings us back to the topical post we were talking about. People feel like if they are aware of Independence Day in every country, or if they are aware of all of these ritualistic events or functions or festivals and holidays, they are building that human connection. Um, Unfortunately, it's also so crowded that it's not really that easy to build that human connection by just making that one happy Raksha Bandhan or happy Independence Day post anymore. So you have to use wit or smart logic to then be able to bring your product into that conversation. One of the people who actually took the moon launch and tied it back into their brand really well. Like one brand that does marketing really, really well in India is Summer House. If you guys know that brand, it's a clothing brand. It makes fairly expensive clothes, not very cheap, but not like crazy expensive, but like 10K for a set of clothes, which is not cheap. So still targeting the 2% probably. But everything they put out, every piece of content, whether it is a photo, whether it is a campaign, it is always extremely well thought out. Um, I'm not a marketer. I don't end up doing as much marketing as I do the branding. So we work with marketing agencies to then help market the product. So my understanding of marketing is what I've learned with just creating designs for, like I said, brand designers and marketers usually fight with each other a lot because good design is not always good marketing, and vice versa. So yeah, like I think marketing is a very big psychology game. You have to really understand the human mind, study a lot about trends, what's happening in the world, how you can make yourself a small piece of that. Yet not be so clingy that people get bored and tired of you and kind of want to be like, sorry, don't have the headspace, unfollow, right? So it's that fine line, like every tough relationship, you have to find that absolute perfect middle ground to make it through to the other side.
So let's move from marketing to design. You say good design is not always good marketing. So what would you say are a couple of things that comprise a list of good design? If you had to make a list of things that comprise good design, what would those be?
First of all, it has to serve its function. What is the purpose of the design? That's most important. Uh, Second, it should be visually appealing. While it can't be visually appealing to everybody all at once, at least the audience that you are targeting with the product that you are designing for, it has to visually appeal to them. It has to speak to you in a way that you feel like, okay, this is solving a problem for me. Um, Good design is often something that is very transparent in the background, right? Whether it is just how well your headphones cancel the noise out. That's the main design function of the headphones. Um, it may not be aesthetically pleasing, but because it is doing its job well, you buy into the product and you want that. Um, some try to do both. So they'll create the really good noise cancellation, but they'll also make it really pretty. Apple is a prime example of a brand that does that. They were a huge disruptor in the category of electronics because when they came into being, no one was doing or no one was considering the aesthetics of a laptop, right? It was just the functionality. Um, they looked like dabbas, it was fine, but no one cared more beyond that. It was just like, as long as it's doing the job, we have a computer, it's great. But that's why Apple became such a disruptive brand, because they actually infused aesthetics and design into a very functional product, and they made sure the functionality of their product was as good as its competitors, if not better in certain cases. Again, depending on what your utility of the product was. They were very okay to alienate people. And that's something design should also has to be comfortable with. That you can never make something that works for 100% of every person that exists. But it has to do what it's doing for its target audience absolutely well. There will always be like people who don't buy into the proposition, but they are not the people you're trying to get to buy your product anyway. Like today, the iPhone still sells at an abnormally high price, right? Even though the innovation on it is not as high as it used to be when the iPhone came out. Now it's built brand value. So it doesn't need to innovate as drastically anymore. But in the beginning, the iPhone was the first full screen touch smartphone. So that was such a big disruptive move that it just had people lining up to buy it. And after it becomes a trend, we all know what happens.
Yeah, it's still the biggest, most awaited phone out there. Even though people are going to criticize it every year, people are still lining up around the block to buy it.
Yeah, my 78-year-old aunt the other day was like, it's September 1st, where's the new iPhone? I know it comes out every September. And I was like, what are you going to do with the iPhone? She's like, I just want it because I know it's the new iPhone. And I was like, the only thing better about it is a camera that you don't use. But for her, that was not relevant. It's the new iPhone. And, I haven't changed my phone in 3 years. So now it's time for me to get a new phone. And if it's a new phone, it has to be an iPhone. So that idea has become so set in the mind of consumers regardless of what that product is offering today. And I think that's what the challenge of good design is, that you have to really be able to start small and focus on the people you need to focus on for it to then translate and transcend into a much larger group of people that probably don't even need what you are selling to them, but they just want in on it because of what you've created.
You'll be designing the thumbnail for this episode, right? Now, I want to know step-by-step process of how do you make a thumbnail? And this is completely selfish and completely for our own use, but step-by-step.
A step-by-step process of how I make a thumbnail. The fastest way to make a thumbnail is to use Canva.
No, not the software aspect. We know Canva, PPT, not that.
Don't ever use PPT.
I know. I use Canva as well. But the colors you will think of, the kind of text you will think of, what would you think of? How do you go about it?
I think that's extremely broad, but I think, again, you have to look at intent. Why are you designing this thumbnail? What is the message it needs to communicate?
Let's look at our podcast as an example.
Correct. Let's use this as an example. Now, say we're designing a thumbnail for Thought Bistro, right? What is the branding of Thought Bistro, and what is your unique value proposition that you are bringing to the environment of podcasts? We have to keep that idea front and center. And again, we have to use some marketing, like we spoke about, gimmick or a fun phrase that we use to list or name this podcast instead of a conversation with Ananya, because who the hell really cares what Ananya is? Let's be honest, no one does. So it's about distilling the value of the conversation, maybe something that you learned from it that you thought was interesting, and putting that into a graphical representation and making that the cover for the podcast. So, for example, maybe the cover for this would be, is marketing a hoax? But no, it's not. Or yes, it is. Find out in the podcast. You see often that people use a question or a leading statement or something that will make someone want to listen to what you're writing there, right? And I think that's the crux of it. The visual or the graphic that you use along with it just has to support the text in this case, because the eventual aim is that someone clicks on the episode and actually listens to what you're saying.
Let's hope like billions of people click on the podcast.
we use this line to market it. See, I've given you so many lines that are just like blooper worthy and marketing worthy.
I was gonna do good design versus good marketing. What wins out?
Is good design bad marketing?
And have like marketing here, design here, like boxing gloves.
Yeah, the next episode can be me with a marketing expert just fighting on this episode for you.
We're getting a marketing expert on this Friday, so if you're down for it, we're down. Awesome. So, you started by saying visual identity. Now, again, what comprises visual identity? If you had to say, if you have to take Thought Bistro, for example, what would you say makes up our visual identity? I mean, that might not be too easy because you're dealing with more physical branding. But if you take any product that matter, what would comprise visual identity?
I just want to add, we are getting full advantage of Ananya's company without actually signing her on.
I'm okay. I literally do this. Like, my website bio, I think my team, we've written a line, like we have a descriptive line per person. I don't know if it's still on our website. It used to be at least. My role is just chief talker and like therapist. This is what I have become now for a living because that's what I end up doing. I'm just on call 24/7, whether it is with my team because it's remote, whether it is with clients, whether it is with prospective clients, whether it is with prospective teammates, vendors. So Ananya just talks. That's Ananya's life. So why not? Let's help some people in the process of talking, hopefully. Um, the question was the brand of what is the visual identity, right?
I'm just giving Thought Bistro as an example.
For Thought Bistro, I can't be very accurate, to be honest, because I haven't studied your visual identity that well. So it won't be fair for me to make comment on that. But a visual identity essentially comprises of all of the elements that you see and associate with a brand. Um, if we were to take a very iconic brand, for example, let's take Nike. Its visual identity is, of course, the swoosh, which has become the biggest part of it, the way they write Nike, and then the font, the color choices, the graphical mood that the brand creates. With Nike, you're used to bold color, you're used to lots of moving stripes in different ways, the idea of motion, right? And those are the elements that comprise of their visual identity. More and more brands need flexibility in their visual identity. It's no longer about a very set group of rules. It needs to be something that is able to adapt with time. Like Akhil was asking before, what do I do to stay relevant or to be noticed as a small company or a small brand? It's just that you need flexibility in what you're creating. The more rigid you are with your visual identity, and I don't mean flexibility in just कि हम कुछ भी करेंगे, बस we'll just keep selling till we get noticed. So that's not what I mean. I mean that with keeping your non-negotiables aside, like this is my value system that is never going to change regardless of everything else. My elements are open to change and are open to adaptation based on the best representation that they have for this episode. Like, for example, not every episode of yours can have the same cover for it because that would not do justice to the episode that you're or the person that's speaking on it. But it can have certain elements that remain constant. Maybe it is the font choice. Maybe it is the placement of where the Thought Bistro logo comes. Maybe it is how you use the words Thought Bistro in an interesting way in the caption of the podcast itself. It's not always necessary to just say Thought Bistro dash name of episode, right? Sometimes it's just about, like we were talking about, that haha moment. So it can just be Ananya's thoughts while sitting in a bistro at the Thought Bistro. I don't know, something as silly as that.
Ananya just talks at the Thought Bistro.
Correct. Uh, that's my role. So, it's just about using your brand in a visual way that make people connect with it. I think the crux remains the same.
So I think what I am taking away from this is that it's very similar to how you are as a person. Like, you keep changing from time to time. The way when you evolve from different stages of life, you change, but your current core value systems stay the same. So similarly with a brand and its visual identities, you have to understand these are the things, these are my value systems, these are the things that are good. Like this is my value system that I follow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the values. And we have to keep those consistent, and everything else, then we can sort of find ways to make things work.
Yeah, kind of. You have to change and adapt with the times because people want that from you. Sometimes people don't want change from you at all. And that's also like humans, right? Who don't want to change at all. So I think it's very similar to what you're saying. There is a lot of overlap in your personal brand and your brand. That's why today, this is a very funny thing I read recently, that more and more products are becoming humanized and humans are becoming brands. And it's so true because everyone wants a personal brand identity, right? Like, what is your brand? How do you speak? It's so curated as an experience that people are not willing to just candidly have a conversation anymore. So, and products have to speak like humans now because they have to be really open and they have to like attract emotion and connect with you. So we are connecting with products, but we're not able to connect as humans. So that is the greatest irony of the time that we live in.
People have been having a very, very hard time sticking to their brand identity. Not brands, like people by themselves, because if I'm a serious person and I want to laugh, and people keep having a tough time. Yeah, like people have a tough time. Oh, I'm not supposed to laugh.
Yeah, we're humans. Like, we're allowed to not be the same person on a daily basis. Like, we have the ability to think cognitively, right? And understand and read a room in a situation. And that's what we should do. So many times I interview kids these days, and I'm shocked at just their trajectories in life and career. It's kind of sad, but it's also scary because I get applications for students who graduated college who will apply to me saying I have 4 years of work experience. And I'm just like, how is that even possible? Like, you literally just graduated college. So you've been in college for 4 years. Where are the 4 years of work experience coming from? And because people can work remotely, because they can moonlight, most of them are working through their college because they're so afraid of competition and they want to make sure that they are able to get a job because a lot of people don't want to hire freshers. So they want to make sure that they have experience as soon as they start out. I interviewed someone recently who had done 3 internships simultaneously over one summer. And it's actually crazy because, and this is just fear driven, right? Like, you don't want to get left behind. And because of that, you are willing to put yourself through anything to make sure that you're winning. I'm not sure what, but winning.
And we are back full circle to Three Idiots. अगर तेज नहीं भागोगे तो कोई तुम्हें कुचल के आगे निकल जाएगा.
Correct.
Ananya, I'm a company. I want to onboard you. Where do I find you? How do I reach you? What's the process?
You can find us on www.9133designstudio.com or on Instagram or on email or by phone. There are multiple ways. But no, seriously, you can find us on our website or on Instagram or on wherever you like. Onboarding process, usually the way it goes is clients reach out to us a lot by referral, which is really nice for us. Of late, there are a lot of random people also that find us, but we also get a lot of our work from our previous clients. So they recommend, or someone will see their product, really like it, and reach out to us. And Vati is a prime example of one of those brands. Since you guys spoke to Surya and Upasana recently, Surya's dad is actually the first person that pushed me into this. He insisted that I have to brand Vati when I knew nothing about branding. And he insisted that he would not let any other person create anything for them if it wasn't me. So he pushed me to such a corner and he was like, it's going to happen. We are going to print it. It's going to go out on shelves and we're going to sell it. And that was my first validator, to be honest, to be like, okay, I can actually do this. Because I was still in college at that point. And I remember a very long and shaky bus ride where I was trying to create their logo for the first time. And so hesitantly send it out to them. And he was just so encouraging. It was his office that I had my first office space in. He gave me a room and he's like, just sit here and work from here whenever you want to. That's where my first team ever sat. So, I mean, I have so much to be thankful for to them. But they, so the process of onboarding a client is through referrals, or if you reach out to us just plain sightedly, it's usually through email or a phone call, where you speak to our studio manager. She takes the brief roughly from you, and we usually set up a discovery call with me after that, where we understand your brief, understand what you're looking for, and then send you a proposal, and then we go from there.
This just reminded me that we've forgotten to touch on a very important aspect. The name.
9133.
Yes, where did that come from? What was the inspiration there?
You guys want to guess?
It's the address of your studio.
Bishop?
I know the answer, so
Well, you can say it, Bob.
So it's India's international dialing code and Calcutta's STD code for the landline numbers, for those of us who still remember landlines exist.
Yeah. So it's location specific, basically. It's based on the coordinates of Calcutta, but telephonically and not geographically that way. That's where the 9133 comes from. And now that we've scattered across the country, we keep using different area codes to talk about different parts of our team. So 9120 is the Pune team, and 9144 is the Bangalore team, and stuff like that. So it's fun.
Lovely.
So we keep thinking about how the goal is to be 9133 with India and Paris, because why not, right? France's country code is 33. So maybe that's where our next offices will be.
Where you get the India and America one and the Indian Canada one are 911. Please, people, dial 911.
No emergencies here. We will stay far away from 911. Although we do end up working with a lot of American clients.
We have this tradition where we ask you a question that was left for you by our previous founder, and you answer that, and you leave us a question for our next founder. So the question for you is, what is the bigger purpose that you're serving, both with your current venture and in life?
I think I'm trying to help people create more meaningful experiences with what they are trying to sell as a business. Not only look at the sellability aspect, why that's important, but also truly understand their story as a founder as to why they are in a certain business, why they are doing what they're doing, and how it can be best represented in whatever space they want it to be represented in. And that's why I say Ananya just talks, because a big part of my role at the studio is to be able to understand human connection and, how to bring the best out of the brand that we are working for. Because it's not only about creating a logo for them. Today, a logo can be literally made on Canva or anywhere else. It's about building that entire communication and brand ecosystem that then their product and they can live within. So yeah, I hope that I'm making a more purposeful and pretty alongside it place for brands to live in and people henceforth. And my purpose in life, I feel like, is very different from what I do at my day job. And while that's a very big part of who I am, and I truly love to do what I do, I'm not sure my purpose in life is necessarily 9133 only. My purpose in life hopefully is to be able to, my grandfather always says this, leave a place kinder than you found it or nicer than you found it. Try to see the goodness in every person. And, experience, like, hope that they experience you in your nicest way. While I'm nowhere close to that, and I'm definitely not the nicest person in any room at all points, I really hope to be able to create that when people interact with me and I interact with them, I leave them a little bit happier or better than they were before that.